What's going on, everybody? So we're trying this yet again a different way, and let's see what we can do here. Give me a second. I'm just going to invite a few people so we can get into some conversations. I got a lot to cover today, and honestly, I do not want to dilly-dally and waste anybody's time whatsoever. Anyway, this is My Political Truth, and my name is Jerry Tomczynski, and you can find me here basically almost every night. I'm here 4 nights a week, extolling the virtues of present-day politics and, you know, all the issues that we have with what's going on, you know, politically. And there are some things that I do want to talk about and address, and, you know, it's not with what's going on. I'm sorry. It's not so much that I'm going to change my approach to this. It's more that I am going to, I'm going to change my approach. My problem is that I've been letting all of this get to me on an emotional level because, you know, just like anybody else that's living in this country right now, with any sort of common sense, I'm concerned for our future. And I don't think that concern translates well when I come across to you guys. It sounds more like anger. And it's not as much anger as it is passion and love and whatever the case for my country. Hey, babe, mom, dad, Carrie, thank you. Welcome all. So the first thing I want to get into tonight is this shooting in Wisconsin. Now, if you guys recall, whoever watches me on a regular basis, I said probably last week or 2 weeks ago, keep your eyes open. There's going to be distractions and shootings and mass shootings, and here we go. So, in the eyes of the mainstream media, they have already found the cops that perpetrated this situation with Jacob Blake guilty. And I understand. I totally understand. I watched the video 1,000 times like everybody else. And this is the conclusion. And you know what? Sorry, that's not the word I want to use. It's not a conclusion that I'm coming to, because I don't think anybody's going to be able to come to any kind of a conclusion until all the facts come out and until all the facts are presented. Right now, it's a guessing game, and everybody's doing, you know, tell me what you saw on the video, and everybody's giving their opinions. Thanks, babe. I appreciate it. So as we see in the video, the man that was shot, Jacob Blake, was walking away from the police. He was doing it in a sort of like a man possessed. You know, he's walking to his car, and there's a picture floating around that he was holding something in his hands. It didn't look like anything much, so I don't want to say anything. And I don't know what he was reaching for. And that's the thing. The cops that were behind him, and I'm fairly certain that the cops said to him, don't move, freeze, whatever the case. We're pointing a gun at you. It would probably be in your best interest to stop. He doesn't stop. He opens his car door. They don't know if he's going for a gun, a knife, whatever. Now, moving on to the shooting itself. They didn't have to shoot him 7 times in the back. I'll be the first to say that. But then again, I came out and I condemned the officers that shot that gentleman in the Wendy's parking lot in Georgia. You see, I don't remember his name anymore. Neither do you guys, because nobody cares about these victims. They're all being used as pawns and as a reason to riot and have complete anarchy in the streets because they know they're not going to be held accountable. Now, I blame this behavior on the public, on the media, because the media is making it seem like it's okay to disrespect cops because all we see is the rioting, these Black Lives Matter people in cops' faces, throwing stuff at them, blinding federal agents, throwing rocks at cops. So these idiots think that it's okay to disrespect officers. I'm going to say it again for the cheap seats. Comply or you will die. Luckily, Mr. Blake isn't dead. He's just paralyzed from the waist down, and that's a tragedy, and that's horrific, and that's terrible. And now he's going to get his own freaking monument in Wisconsin. Meanwhile, he's been convicted of domestic abuse. He's been convicted of, I believe there's some kind of sexual offender thing in his past. Somebody said pedophile. I don't want to say that because I don't know for sure. But there is sexual offender, some kind of sexual offender conviction. There's domestic abuse conviction. The cops have been involved with this guy before. So they knew what they were coming to. So let's not make him out to be another hero. Like Mr. Gold Casket over there, George Floyd. Really? Really? George Floyd got a gold casket, but DeVell Gardner Jr., the 1-year-old that was shot in New York, wasn't even mentioned on freaking CNN. So, it's all relative. You know, the black men, well, listen, we all know what it is now. The black people that get shot by white cops, oh my God, they're going to get coverage everywhere. But the black babies and the black children that are getting shot by other black people, that doesn't matter. Does not matter. Let's move on to something positive. You know what? I've been coming on here for the better part of almost 3 months and just completely, attacking the left. And I don't even want to talk about the left today because last night was the first night of of the Republican National Convention. And the first night alone showed you the difference between the two parties. So last week during the DNC, all we heard was gloom and doom, the end of the world. If you don't elect Joe Biden, the world's going to end. And Michelle Obama said that if you elect President Donald Trump, things can and will get worse. That's a direct quote. Well, we didn't hear any of that last night. What we heard is what President Trump has done, why President Trump is a good president, the best president we've had since Reagan, why our country was on such a great path. And you know what? It wasn't just old, useless people speaking. It was a mix of people. We had Tim Scott. We had Charlie Kirk. We had Vernon Jones, who's a Democrat. We had, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who, she was a little bit too hyped for my taste, but I get it. She's passionate. We had Kim Classic out of Maryland, who was making a big splash on the political scene. We had Herschel Walker. We had Andrew Pollock, the father of Meadow Pollock, who was shot at Parkland, Florida, at Stoneman Douglas High School on February 14th, 2018. I'm going to do this in order. I can't get into what every single speaker said, but I did make some footnotes, and I do want to get into what some of these people said because I think some of these speeches were brilliant. I think they were amazing. I think the production quality alone was so much better than that snooze fest last week. I mean, the DNC was a complete and utter boring joke. A complete and utter boring joke. It looked like it was produced in like a high school video class. I remember in middle school, I don't know if any of my people that went to middle school with me in Staten Island, IS7, we had a field trip one day to the local cable station that produced all the cheesy shows for like local TV. And I did some stuff back in the 7th grade. And I think that looked more professional Now in the 7th grade, that was 1991. That looked more professional than the DNC did last week. Hey Sherry, welcome. So the first person to catch my eye was Charlie Kirk. If you guys don't know Charlie Kirk, you could see him on One America, on Fox. He has his own podcast. He has his own blogs. He's just a very, very, very smart and talented young man. He's 26 years old, and he runs the largest pro-American student organization in the country. It's called Turning Point USA. So Charlie comes on, and one of the things that he said that stuck out to me was the following. He said, and I quote, "For decades, ruling class leaders in both parties sold out our future to China, to faceless corporations, and to self-serving lobbyists. They did it to preserve their own power and enrich themselves, all while rigging the system to hold down the good, decent, middle-class patriots striving to build a family and pursue a decent life. All of this changed dramatically in 2015 when a billionaire named Donald Trump put his own life of luxury on the line." Now, that right there said everything you needed to know about the swamp. And when we say swamp, we don't just mean Democrats. We mean the corrupt Democrats. We mean the corrupt Republicans. And I think if you do a little bit of digging and you look at every single Republican that backed Joe Biden, and there's nobody current in other than Kasich and the other guy that mattered. Anybody current that matters backed Biden. This was all mostly retired people, Republicans, and they're making a big deal about these Republicans backing Biden. You know what? The Dems, they could have these traitors also, because those are the same creatures that were involved in selling out our country piece by piece to China, to the Middle East, and to God knows who else. And I promise you, I'm telling you, if Hillary Clinton would have beaten President Trump in 2016, we would have been at war right now. I'm not sure with how many different countries, but we would most certainly be at war. Most likely with North Korea, but I digress. Charlie went on to say one of the next poignant things that he said, again, I quote, "The American way of life is being dismantled by a group of bitter, deceitful, vengeful activists who never built anything in their lives. They have us locking up pastors while releasing violent criminals from prison." I mean, listen, he hit the nail right on the head. Right on the head. There were pastors, or a pastor in Texas that got locked up for holding church services for people that needed it during the pandemic. I mean, and they were releasing violent felons by the hundreds from Rikers Island, from California, from Folsom, from Chino. What the hell is going on? When you hold a criminal, a violent convicted criminal, in higher regard than a pastor, there's nothing wrong with the people around you. There's something wrong with you, and you need to check yourself immediately. Charlie continues by saying, quote, "We are kicking doctors off social media, yet promoting Chinese state-funded propaganda on major tech platforms. This election is the most critical since 1860, when a man named Lincoln was elected to preserve the Union from disintegration." I mean, thanks, Marlon. I can't. I had to laugh at that. Marlon says such nice hair. I appreciate that. That made me giggle. Thank you. See, I'll always comment on the compliments. You know, you can't compliment me enough. I'm joking. He concluded, Charlie did, by saying, quote, "We will be a country that makes it easier to have many children, live quiet and peaceable lives, and worship your God without a tyrant trying to get in the way." I mean, he said it all. He said it all. Charlie Kirk is a very, very smart, and I call him kid because he's a kid. He's 26 years old. He hasn't even touched the surface yet of his experiences. And how much more evil, I'll be honest, how much more evil he's going to see if he stays in this political arena and if he continues to be so close to this party. He's going to see a lot of things that I promise you he never ever wanted to see. Hey, Michelle, thank you. I really appreciate you watching. I miss you guys. Hopefully when this is all over, Bianca and I could come out and visit you guys. Moving along, the next person to speak and catch my attention was Kim Klacik. You don't know who Kim Klacik is? She is the African-American girl out of Maryland that is cat eyes and a killer do. I'm voting red. It's all about the red, Marlon. Whatever I got to do to make people vote red, I'll do it. Do my hair, do my eyes. Listen, my wife does makeup. If I got to put mascara on, I'll do that too. Listen, if it's going to get people to vote red and get these idiots to stop believing this Joe Biden and Kamala heals up Harris nonsense, I'll do what needs to be done. I'm all about the service, kid. So Kim Klacik is like I said, a young African-American lady out of the 7th District of Maryland, basically, representing she represents the hood, the garbage part of Baltimore. And she comes right out on fire and she says, and I quote, "Let me remind you, the Democrats have controlled this part of Baltimore City for over 50 years, and they have run this beautiful place right into the ground. Abandoned buildings, liquor stores on every corner, drug addicts, guns on the street. That's now the norm in many neighborhoods. You think Maryland taxpayers would be getting a whole lot since our taxes are out of control. Instead, we're paying for decades of incompetence and corruption. Sadly, the same cycle of decay exists in many of America's Democrat-run cities." Hit the nail on the head. She, right there, in those few sentences, she called out New York, she called out Chicago, she called out Seattle, she called out Portland, she called out Atlanta. I could keep going on and on and on for the list. Because these Democrat-run cities are just a sneak preview what the entire country is going to look like if we allow these parasites to get into office. Period. She continues by saying, quote, "Joe Biden believes we can't think for ourselves, that the color of someone's skin dictates their political views. We're not buying the lies anymore. You and your party have neglected us for far too long. We want safety in our neighborhoods. We want to make the most of the federal opportunity zone I'm standing in right now in West Baltimore. The only way that's going to happen is if President Trump is reelected. Period. We stand absolutely no chance if Joe Biden and Kamala get in there. It's not going to happen. Kim Klacik concludes, I don't know what's going on today. She says, President Trump is bringing this country back roaring. He's bringing the American spirit of life for all Americans. So again, the complete opposite of the gloom and doom of the DNC. We have a positive message. We have ideas. President Trump released his agenda for his second term, and it looks nothing like the Marxist manifesto that Joe Biden released last week. That's just ridiculous. Irina says, yes, Trump will be reelected. He would, listen, the only way Trump can lose is if they rig it, Irina. And they don't want to say it on TV because then it's going to be deemed controversial. It's going to be deemed this and that. And listen, I'm saying it right here. The only way President Trump can lose is if they rig it. You know how they were talking about, if President Trump loses, he's not going to accept the defeat, blah, blah, blah. Hillary Clinton comes out. This was just about an hour before I came on. I got this news over my wire. And it says, Hillary Clinton says Biden should not accept results to election. And she says, quote, don't concede under any circumstance. Isn't this what they're threatening President Trump is going to do? Not accept the results? Everything that they accuse President Trump of doing, they're the ones that are actually doing it. And the mainstream media we know is bought and paid for. They're in the pockets of the Dems. But the fact that people that support the Democrat Party don't see this and don't understand this. I'm sorry, folks, but you don't deserve a vote. You don't deserve anything but to ride the short bus with your buddies and don't get involved in American politics. If you think that Joe Biden, who has served 47 years between Congress, Senate, local politics, whatever, and has done absolutely nothing but sell our country out. If you think after that 47 years, this time he'll keep his promise, this time he'll do what he says, then you deserve what you get. I'm sorry, man. I'm just sorry. Eric, welcome. I see you just jumped on. Eric, I was just talking about that time in IS-7 where we went to the local TV station and did our little half-hour news segment back in IS-7. I guess we were in 7th grade. I was just saying how much that was better quality than last week's Democratic National Convention. I'm sure you'll remember that little experience we had. So I didn't want to jump on this Clinton thing, but it's really important. She says, first of all, this was an interview with her former campaign communications director, Jennifer Palmieri. Now, yeah, that isn't at all biased. That at all isn't going to be fixed. The comments from Clinton were quite ironic, considering she famously said in 2016 that anyone who, quote, won't respect the results of the election is a direct threat to our democracy. She said that in 2016. And now she's saying, don't accept the results under any circumstance. I mean, listen. She says, if it's a close election, let's say Biden wins, what do you think Trump will do? Palmieri asked. Clinton answered by starting a conspiracy theory stating that the Trump administration may be messing up absentee balloting so that they can get a narrow advantage in electoral college on election day. It's not absentee balloting that he has a problem with, Hillary. It's universal mail-in voting. Big difference. I'm not getting into that. Again, the point of me talking about this is the continuation on how the Democrat Party always accuses President Trump of doing what they're doing, because that makes sense. One of the best moments in last night's DNC, they showed video clips of the 3 failing governors, Newsom, Murphy, and Il Duce Cuomo, talking about how great President Trump's response was to the coronavirus pandemic when the pandemic when it first started. You know how the same 3 governors are now completely excoriating the president and saying he didn't act quick enough, he didn't do what needed to be done. So, Gavin Newsom said in his praising of President Trump, quote, he said everything that I could have hoped for. Promise made, promise kept, end quote. Andrew Cuomo followed that up by saying, quote, he is ready, willing, and able to help. He has been responsive. He's done a lot of good things. What the federal government did was a phenomenal accomplishment. And then it concluded with the imbecile from Jersey, Phil Murphy. Quote, in our hour of need, you all literally are helping us in a big way. We were at the edge, and this is life or death stuff, and we're forever thankful for that. So, when they needed stuff and they got stuff, the thing is, they all did this praising on TV, as we can see. We saw this with the clips that the convention showed of these 3 idiots praising President Trump. Now, do they not know that they're filmed doing this? Are they not aware that they are filmed and their words will come back to them? The thing is, they know they won't be held accountable because Cuomo can do stuff like write a book on managing the crisis when he's responsible for 7,000 deaths. And the number's probably more like 11,000, but that's a whole big different scientific explanation that I'm not getting into. Okay, the next speaker at the convention was Herschel Walker. You guys, whoever doesn't know Herschel Walker, he was a football player in the 80s and into the early 90s. He was a great, great football player. And he has had a friendship with President Trump ever since President Trump drafted him when President Trump owned the New York Generals of the U.S. Football League. So he says, Herschel Walker, and I quote, "I've known Donald Trump for 37 years, and I don't mean just casual ran into him from time to time. I'm talking about a deep personal friendship." Listen, I've known a lot of people for a lot of years. I don't think there's many people that I've known for 37 years. Eric's on here. I've known Eric. Eric, we're going on 30 years, right? Middle school, 30 years. Eric and I have known each other. And that's basically the length that I know people. People that know each other that long, they know these people and their character and their personality and the way they speak and the way they act and their likes and their hates and their racism and their prejudices and whatever. So I would much rather listen to somebody that's known somebody for over 3 decades, just short of 4 decades, rather than somebody on an opposite team looking to just completely, for lack of a better word, crap on the person. They're going to call him racist as much as they can. As much as they can. He continued by saying, "I take it as a personal insult that people would think I've had a 37-year friendship with a racist. People who think that don't know what they're talking about." I mean, listen, the next person to speak after that was another African-American. All these African-Americans speaking on behalf of President Trump, but he's so damn racist. He must have paid all them off, right? He must have. He must have. Obviously, that's tongue-in-cheek. I hope you guys know that. Next was Vernon Jones. Now, Vernon Jones, he's a special kind of guy. He is a Democratic congressman out of Georgia. If you recall, he's the one that got into the argument with that Melvin fool on MSDNC, where the journalist, I use that term very loosely, that on MSDNC asked Mr. Jones if he was being paid by President Trump and his campaign to support him, and that's when Mr. Jones went off and completely embarrassed him on live national TV. So Mr. Jones came on and he said, quote, "You may be wondering, why is a lifelong Democrat speaking at the Republican National Convention? That's a fair question. Here's your answer. The Democratic Party does not want black people to leave their mental plantation. We've been forced to be there for decades and generations. But I have news for Joe Biden. We are free. We are free people with free minds, and I'm part of a large and growing segment of the black community who are independent thinkers, and we believe that Donald Trump is the president that America needs to lead us forward." And he is. President Trump lowered the unemployment rate in every single demographic, not just for African Americans, not just for Latinos, not just for Asians, for everybody. President Trump does not look at the United States as demographics. He looks at us like Americans. And the sooner the Democrats start doing that and cut out the identity politics and the race baiting, maybe somebody will take them seriously. Mr. Jones continues by saying, quote, "Joe Biden has had 47 years to produce results, but he's been all talk and no action, just like so many of the Democrats who have been making promises to the black voters for decades. We've been their captive audience when President Trump sought to earn the black vote. The Democratic Party leaders went crazy. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer literally started wearing kente clothes around the U.S. Capitol as if pandering were enough to keep us satisfied." He continues by saying when President Trump took office, he changed everything. He delivered historic funding to HBCUs, that is, historic black colleges and universities. And he guaranteed it for 10 years, something that has never happened in the history of this country, including under Barack Obama. Barack Obama did nothing to help the historic black colleges and universities. At all. And President Trump, he's the racist. He's the racist. He's the problem. He continues by saying, the president also built the most inclusive economy ever with a record low unemployment for African Americans and record high participation in the workforce. These are people of a different color, of a different race, of a different background, all extolling the virtues of President Trump. And he has a lot. Don't get me wrong, he's not perfect. I'll never say he's perfect. There's nobody out there that's perfect. But the Democrats are making it seem like Joe Biden and Kamala are the perfect team. All right, guys, I've been on here for a while. I'm going to end this. Join me tomorrow for the second half of my dive into the speakers. I'm going to continue tomorrow. I'm going to talk about Andrew Pollock, the father of Metal Pollock. I'm going to talk about Tim Scott. His speech was phenomenal. And I'm going to talk about, one more. Maximo Alvarez, the Cuban immigrant that lives in Miami, the businessman. He was fantastic. So I'm going to get into all that tomorrow. As usual, one last comment. Sherry says, if Trump don't get in, we're all in deep. Yep, we are. So this quote comes from Rebecca Friedrich. She's a California public school teacher that also spoke yesterday. I thought this quote was phenomenal. It's not really a quote. It's a part of her speech. I turned it into a quote, and she said, quote, the only way to keep a free republic is with well-educated, moral citizenry that can self-govern. On that note, thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. Enjoy the RNC. Have a great night, and I will see you guys tomorrow.